Welcome back to Media 7. Last week, Television New Zealand published its results for the year to June 30. It showed a near 90% drop in profits to $2 million, but any profit at all might be seen as an achievement in some of the worst market conditions in history. The result didn't come easily. It took $13 million in cost cuts, including the sacking of 88 employees. But what of next year and the year after? Two stories by John Drinnan in the Weekend Herald noted that with the charter scrapped, TVNZ is expected by the government to act commercially. No more dual remit. What will that mean for TVNZ and indeed for other free-to-air broadcasters? To discuss that, I'm joined by TVNZ's Head of Corporate Affairs, Peter Parasini, New Zealand Broadcasting School Head and former TVNZ News Chief, Paul Norris, and New Zealand Herald Business Editor, Liam Dan. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. I'm sure we'll have more than we can get through tonight, but let's start. Peter, a decent result in a bad year, is that the official line?
Well, that's the truth, actually. You know, there aren't many Australasian media companies this year that have posted any profit at all. So we've done pretty well, considering. You know, a lot of hard work, though, by a lot of people to get to that number, though.
The cost cutting caused quite a bit of distress in the building. It was really hard for staff. Have we seen the end of it?
Absolutely. There are no plans for any further redundancies. But having said that, you know, the company has to be agile. It has to move with the market, and if the market moves, you know, we'll have to react accordingly. So, you know, there are no plans at the moment, but who knows what will happen in the marketplace.
Is it the case that the one department that didn't suffer cuts is New Media, that does all the web stuff and will be doing TiVo?
Yeah, there were two departments that didn't have any cuts in the last 6 or so months, New Media and the sales department. So the departments that are actually bringing in the money, we've said to them, you know, we'll continue to keep your resources at the current level because, you know, we're hopeful that you'll continue to help turn this business around.
You're making money out of New Media. I'm sure Rupert Murdoch would like to have a word.
It's doubling in its revenues. It's on a high growth path. Still a lot of work to do there, but you know, as the other media will tell you, it's an expensive business to be in, but you've got to be in to play the game.
Paul, what did you make of it? Was it as good a result as could be expected?
Well, look, I wonder if I could just take the liberty of broadening things out a bit here, Russell.
I'm sure you'll do it anyway, Paul.
Because I think we're at a turning point. I think we're seeing the end of TVNZ as a genuine national or public broadcaster, and there's really two reasons for that. One is that the government has stripped TVNZ of the charter and its charter money, but then you just have to look at the issue of sports rights, a hot topic currently. TVNZ loses out to Sky in the rights for the Olympics and the Winter Olympics. Then a few months back we find that they're unable really to continue to hold the rights for the Commonwealth Games, and they're offering them up to Sky. And now, ignominy of all ignominies, they're about to be trumped by Maori television for the rights, free-to-air rights for the Rugby World Cup.
Trumped with taxpayers' money.
Trumped with taxpayers' money, but it's not a good look. And I have to say that it leaves TVNZ looking pretty much a shadow of its former self.
Does it matter though? Does it? I mean, sport's all about money. It's professional sport. There are tens of millions of dollars involved. Does TVNZ have to even play in that game to be a public broadcaster?
Well, I think perhaps it's not so much the public side of things, it's the national broadcaster. I think there is an expectation throughout the country that big games, particularly those that are still left and not taken up by Sky, will be seen on TVNZ. And we're about to see, I think, that that's not going to happen with the Rugby World Cup, and I think that's quite serious for TVNZ.
Liam Dan, one thing that doesn't seem like it's going to happen, as you noted in your column on Saturday, is a sale of TVNZ. Jonathan Coleman seems quite comfortable to leave it in public hands.
Yeah, for two very pragmatic reasons. One, I think he said, he told John Drinnan, the public, there's no real appetite, so that this government isn't going to fight that battle. And two, who would you sell it to? And that's a problem for a lot of businesses that other businesses that are in trouble. At the moment, he said there was no buyer. The reality is there might be a buyer at some point. This is a lousy time to sell anything. TV is on the threshold of a new sort of world order. Sort of. I mean, newspapers have already seen the internet come and change the dynamic massively. What we're seeing now is because of the speed of broadband, that TV or video is becoming the next thing. So newspapers have had their big hit. They've still got problems.
That was the other point you made, was that it's one thing to get up a credible online platform, which the Herald has done. Another thing to fund the whole operation.
And to get it to profitability. Revenue growth is one thing, and it's great to come off a low base and grow revenue. And I don't dispute that TVNZ's doing the right things and ticking the right boxes in terms of new media, but it's actually a really high risk place to be playing for any investor. Now, in this case, all the investors happen to be New Zealand taxpayers, and as TV becomes more of a high risk game, and if it doesn't have if the public good aspect of it is not within TVNZ's model, if it's been outsourced to New Zealand On Air or whatever, then is there a debate to be had about selling it? I understand. I gather they probably had that debate in the 90s. The previous national government at that time, they were probably looking at the dividends they were getting, and that was a factor not to do it. This time around, you've got the other problem. The dividends aren't going to be huge for a while. That means it's not a great time to sell.
I think I need to put some of this to Peter Parasini. For all that the digital business, the new media business is doubling in size, it's still very small. Is there any realistic prospect of it sustaining an organisation the size of TVNZ?
Oh, look, the core of our business will remain television as we know it, but it's increasingly important as people change technologies and people access their news and information and entertainment differently, that we're also branching out into other ways of delivering that content. And that's how you've got to think of it, I suppose. The core of our business will still be about delivering New Zealand content to New Zealanders. But the other part of the strategy, the key important part of that strategy, is having partnerships with others. So in the last 3 years, for example, we've created TVNZ6 and TVNZ7, TVNZ On Demand, tvnz.co.nz. We've now got our content available on PCs, on mobile phones.
You're inspiring on every screen. I get
no, that's right, and it's important that we get across on those
Can we
screens.
go to this point of Paul's, that TVNZ, his claim is that TVNZ's identity as a public or national broadcaster is in danger of seeping away. I mean, your boss, Rick Ellis, used the phrase national broadcaster. What would it be about TVNZ that would make it a national broadcaster? If it's just competing in the commercial market, how is it a national broadcaster?
Well, annually we produce about 4,000 hours of local content for New Zealanders. That's 3 times our nearest rival, TV3. We continue to show events of national importance. The Maori Queen's tangi, Sir Edmund Hillary's state funeral. This morning on Good Morning, we were raising money for the Pacific tsunami victims. So we'll continue to do those things that are important to New Zealanders. But you're right, it becomes increasingly difficult as new media organisations come along. People access their news, information, entertainment in different ways. And the only way we can do that is to continue to be strong locally. What
happens to this channel in TVNZ6 in 2.5 years' time when the $89 million runs out? Because Jonathan Coleman said no more.
Well, that's a piece of work we're doing at the moment. We're assessing what we have to do if we're to keep these channels and keep them viable, because the shareholders indicated that they won't continue funding.
Paul, do you think they'll be viable? Do you think free-to-air TV is going to be viable?
Well, I think there'll always be some sort of place for free-to-air TV, but it's certainly under very, very big challenges at the moment. And I don't know what the answer is about 6 and 7, and I don't think anybody really knows that at this point as to how they could be enabled to continue unless they became commercial or semi-commercial. But I think there are just going to be increasing pressures on the free-to-air business. We're not at all sure that the advertising revenue that's disappeared during the recession, whether you'll get all of that back. And I think, you talk about the hours of local content and so forth, and that's clearly very important, but you've actually had to reduce the amount of money that you're spending on local content by 10%, I believe. And I think that with increasing financial pressures in the coming years, you're going to find it harder and harder to sustain that level of local content, because it's always going to be cheaper for you to buy a cheap import rather than...
Well, you were talking about the sport. Giving up the Commonwealth Games rights has freed up, I gather, $11 million for local production.
It's very good for the bottom line, but is it good for the public? Is it good for the public of New Zealand? That's a different matter altogether.
Liam Dan, we'll go to you. We've been talking a lot about TVNZ. How about TV3, which is, its books aren't quite so open, but we do know that it has taken on an enormous amount of debt. Who would you rather be?
Well, I'd rather be TVNZ, despite having to go and tell Jonathan Coleman and Bill English and co that the dividend's not that good. Yeah, I'd rather be talking to them than bankers. So TV3's owned by a private equity company, Ironbridge. They do publish financial statements, but because they do it to the company's office, they're about 8 months behind. So what we know is up till August 30 last year, and at that point, I mean, not to be specific about numbers, but they look like they've got, on the media part of what they own in New Zealand, at that point they had at least as much debt as what they paid for it, probably more. Since then, well, things have been horrible, obviously. So the chances are the company itself is worth less than, almost certainly worth less than what they owe on it. And the banks are obviously a lot.
So they're in negative
the banks
equity.
are a lot more stressed out than they were, yeah. And a few months ago there was a lot of talk and speculation around the market about the stress they're under. That's probably calmed down. I mean, and it was across the board through the private equity sector. Everyone was looking for the private equity bubble, to burst. And but I think what's happened is one, they probably have looked everywhere and found other funding lines. And they have investors they can go back to, but also the banks don't have really anywhere to go. I mean, they can't. There isn't anywhere particularly you could sell it right now, for any kind of decent price. So the banks kind of have to live with it. And a likely scenario is that TV3 could come up for sale again in a couple of years. That they ride it out until the value is somewhere around break even and notch that one up to. These private equity guys have a number of investments and some succeed, some don't, and they've all taken a hit with what's happened in the last year. But TV3 does, from what I know, run on a bit of a shoestring anyway, so they can't slash and burn completely because they've got to maintain a product that can be sold again at some point. So it's difficult to know how serious things are, but I think they're treading water at the moment. It's the gut feeling, I guess. Yeah.
But it's true also of newspapers too, Russell. Independent news media who own the
APN.
Yes, that's right. Who own the Herald.
In a perfectly awful position.
That's right. They're in a terrible position too.
Independent is a shareholder of APN.
But the one company
Fairfax Media as well.
The one company that's not in such a bad position is Sky. I mean, Sky is the one who's really ruling the roost now, the king of the jungle, the king of the media jungle in New Zealand. I think it made profits of somewhere around 90 million last year.
And they really didn't take much of a hit, to be honest. I mean,
No.
because
the business model's completely different, of course, because it's subscription versus trying to draw a mass audience to watch a television show.
And the recession's actually been good for audience. I don't know what the TVNZ figures are exactly, but I gather they're quite good. Although there hasn't been the ad revenue, obviously, but people stay at home, and that's helped Sky as well. They stay at home and they don't spend on.
But has
other
Sky
things.
Just finally, this government has been seen as being very supportive of Sky. Paul, do you think there will come a point where it will have to become concerned about Sky's dominance in the market?
Well, it's already turned down an ongoing review that was started under the Labour government, probably much to the dislike or disgust of TV3 and TVNZ, because they had been pushing for reforms and regulation to really curtail what they saw as the excesses of Sky. And I wonder if Peter can tell me whether it's evident from Sky's behaviour that they are actually bidding for program rights in your territory and effectively bidding up the price so that either TV3 or TVNZ...
I know the very short answer there.
They were before. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Peter Parasini, Paul Norris and Liam Dan. Now, radio ain't what it used to be. For a start, it sometimes does actually come with pictures now. Simon Pound went to look at the way QFM breakfast host Whammo is meddling with the medium.
It's around 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in Ponsonby, and the only people around are joggers and breakfast radio hosts. We're at the Kiwi FM studios with Glenn Whammo Williams.
Coming up after 8 o'clock, T Radar's with us, digging through some of the day's issues. Hope you can stick around for that. This is a one-man operation, this particular show. So I'm more interested in talking about concepts, talking to interesting authors, musicians, stuff that is not necessarily tied into a particular time frame, that also might be interesting next week and the week after and next year as well.
We're here because Glenn is doing some pioneering things, making his radio live on online.
Ever since I started radio, I found the tyranny of the medium was that you could do a fantastic interview, but only you and the audience have heard it, but then it's gone. And like literally it's on these radio waves and they're gone out into space and it carries on and it's probably gone off to another solar system, but who knows who's listening out there? Probably no one. I'm making the responsibility my own to put it up on the web in perpetuity.
He doesn't just record the audio of interviews, he makes proper clips, like this track of his game review. He gets a trailer of the video game ready, plays a bit, then cuts between a live vision feed he gets of his reviewer via Skype video calling and intercuts it with himself in studio. Rather complicated.
Gerard Campbell, thanks for looking at Mini Ninjas and Halo ODST.
All this is done with the aid of an affordable webcam and free online services.
So the whole show goes out live on ustream.tv. An interview in the studio, it can be done in 11 minutes. 10 minutes later, it can be on YouTube. I think it's the future.
He uses media like Twitter, ustream.tv, YouTube, podcasts, and his website to have a conversation with his audience.
I really like the idea of, in radio, to interact more with the audience in the social media context and actually find out what they think.
So, whether online or in studio, like here with musicians Pig Out, he does it all, and by himself, not even a producer.
We spent a year writing the record, and the thing is if people swipe it free,
Yeah.
you know, like, we have to go out and get, you know, real jobs.
So, thanks for having us this early morning, sir. We'll catch you again online, at whatever time suits us. Because this time shifting, as Glenn shows, is where a lot of media is heading. And it's just the beginning.
I suppose it's an evolution of broadcast mediums using social media, using the web to get content out there. Where it's going to take us, I mean, that's anyone's guess.
Simon Pound with that report. After the break, Matt McCartan and David Cohen head to head.